Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this little webinar on document intelligence and what we're doing in Konica Minolta and Next Agenda on document intelligence and effective ways of handling documents. We are so excited to have you here. These are some products that we are really excited about sharing with you guys, and we really hope you'll enjoy what we have to say. I should have my screen on now. You should be able to see my PowerPoint, and hopefully you can hear me as well. If someone wants to just give me a little heads up if they can hear me in the chat or in the questions, that would be very much appreciated. But I'm pretty sure it works otherwise. And let's get started. Let's see if I can click here. So just briefly about myself. My name is Christian. I'm a consultant here at the Next Agenda, part of the Konica Minolta group. I've been working with data for 20 years. I did a PhD in astrophysics many years ago about hunting planets around other stars, just like the sun has planets around it. You know, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, if you want. All the other stars we see on the night sky, they actually have planets as well, and we can hunt these planets. We can actually detect them using a lot of different methods. I was part of that work many years ago, and since then I've been working in the financial sector, Danske Bank, so Denmark, those kind of places, and in consulting for almost 10 years now as a senior consultant and team lead and middle management kind of thing, and enjoying that very much. Actually, really happy with working with data and with customers and with machine learning and AI and helping people find the right solution for their problem. It's really exciting, and one of the most exciting things I've really worked with in all that time is what I'm going to share with you today. I can honestly say that. All right, so quickly about Next Agenda. Next Agenda is a relatively small company that have been acquired by Konica Minolta a few years ago. We are still mainly in Copenhagen, Aarhus, but we have actually, since I made the slide, expanded to Malmö, and we are expanding all across Northern Europe now together with Konica. It's a really cool expansion these years. We are very much focused on consulting within data, so traditional business intelligence and data warehousing, a lot of IoT work, Internet of Things. And then what we here call advanced analytics, but you know, machine learning and AI, or whatever you want to call it, data science, making advanced ways of working with data and predicting what will happen in the future. Really, that's what we do within the data science field. We predict the future. And we work all across Northern Europe now, customers actually all across Europe, to be honest, and customers from Hungary and Portugal to Finland, with a lot of Danish customers still, of course. So document intelligence is a way to automate our work or your work with documents, right? And documents is in a very broad sense. It's emails, PDFs, Word documents, scans and prints, everything that's usually text, but also some images on a page, really, right? Is what we can automate your work with those kind of files. Everyone these last few years have been talking about unstructured data. If you were part of if you went to any Microsoft conference or something like that 5 years ago, everyone talked about big data. It's not so popular now to talk about big data. Now you have to be cool. If you want to be cool, you say you work with unstructured data. Ooh, you're so clever. But what unstructured data really is just a way to have a lot of varied files in the same place. So with unstructured data, you have scans and images and backups of virtual machines and JSON files and your data warehouse, SQL tables maybe in one big pile. And you're really clever if you do that. Wow, I don't know how clever you are, but you're very modern at least if you do that. You have all your data just saved in one big pile, and then at some point you're going to ask yourself the questions: how do I use all that data? How do I get value out of all that data? What do I do with it? And this is where something like document intelligence will help you, because document intelligence adds structure to unstructured data. With all these piles of weird documents you have messing around, we can actually add structure to it. Just one simple example is shown here in the top or in the right side of your screen. A simple scan of a driver's license is pretty much useless. So you are some engineering company, you have hundreds of engineers, all with driving out to the customers, to the build sites, and you want to make sure that all your engineers actually have a driver's license driving out there. How do you check that? Well, you can open all your driver's license files every month and make sure that no one has an expired driver's license, or that people have the correct categories, and you have acquired driver's license scans for all your employees and stuff like that. Or if you could somehow magically extract the data from the scans of the driver's licenses and then make a little computer program that checks who has the valid licenses and not. Right? And this is what document intelligence does. It adds structure to these scans, to this unstructured data, and enables you to make a little program that can monitor who has what driver's license categories, and whether anyone is expired. This is what document intelligence does. It'll trawl through all your documents in this big pile of unstructured data. It will recognize which one of these documents are actually scans of driver's licenses, and if it detects a scan of a driver's license, it'll go into the document and extract who is a document about, what is their personal number, birthday, when was the card issued, the card number maybe even, and which categories is the person allowed to operate. This is a very fine example of what document intelligence does. Recognizes the type of document and extracts the relevant pieces of information within the document. And maybe the driver's license is a trivial example to you. I'll show you several other examples of how much value you can actually add to your documents and your work processes with document intelligence. So document intelligence has several modules built in. I've already hinted the two most essential modules, and they are classification. Well, we call it classification, right? But it's just detecting the type of document. So if you have a big email folder, for example, an email is a kind of a document, maybe you want document intelligence to extract a specific kind of email. So all the complaint emails, why don't we ask document intelligence to recognize this is a complaint, this is something else. And if it's a complaint, document intelligence can extract, first of all, of course, all the standard information from an email that a lot of programs could have extracted for you. Something like who is complaining, who is the email from at least, and what date was it sent, what's the subject, is it marked as important, stuff like that. But what document intelligence can also do, and what's very advanced actually, is what we call named entity recognition, or NER, and that is extract text fields from within the actual body of the email, right? So someone is writing, dear company, I'm so grumpy, and you have this date, you didn't remove your parked car, blah, 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 blah. We can go into the email, and even if it's written as free text, we can go into the email and extract who's complaining about what date did some incident occur, who is what was the damage, perhaps, if they mention that in words. We can what was the damage endured, etc. Another example is parking fines sent to a company that operates a lot of cars. I'm currently in car mode today. So someone operates a lot of cars and they get, unfortunately, a lot of parking fines. We can go into the big inbox to a major Danish or major international company, the main inbox, go through the all the emails and recognize parking fines. Whoops, that's a parking fine. This is something else. This is someone quitting their job. That's not really their job. This is their housing bills. We don't care about that. Whoop, parking fine. Parking fine. We know about parking fines. Take the parking fine, recognize, maybe from an attachment inside the email or from the actual body of the email, which car was parked illegally, at what date, at what location, what was the reason for the illegality, at what time of day, etc., etc. All this information we can actually extract from the parking fine, even if the parking fines come from all different companies. That you know, if for example in Copenhagen here we have almost 100, at least 20, 50 different people that can issue parking fines, and they will all look different, but document intelligence can actually extract these pieces of information from any kind of parking fine, the number plate and the time and the reason. All this information we can extract from any parking fine, which is so powerful. And just a few examples: we can recognize the type of document, parking fine, non-parking fine, for example, and if it's a parking fine, we can extract the relevant information from the parking fine, whether it be in attachment or in body. So advanced. A few other modules inside document intelligence that we sometimes use for some customers and that other customers don't find relevant. These two things I just mentioned, I think we use them practically in all our document intelligence projects, but there's a few more modules, we call it, that are sometimes used and sometimes are not relevant to specific projects. Of course, we for many applications, also the ones I already mentioned, it can be quite nice to not have, for example, a driver's license as an image, but to extract all the text in the document, and we can do that. It's called optical character recognition. Pretty old technology that has actually improved a lot recently, and that is quite efficient and getting the right text out of the documents. At some point, sometimes it's relevant to not only know that there's some text, but also in which language the text is written. And if it's written, maybe in some cases we won't be able to actually understand the document because it's written in some text. In other cases, we will know that based on the language, the email has to be forwarded to a particular person, or that we will actually translate the text. If it's in one language, maybe we translate to another text. I saw someone raising their hand, but someone is saying no sound. Hello.
Hello.
There's sound. Okay, that should be sound. I'll just write that in the chat. Sorry about that. Where should I send to on? Where should I write something here? Okay. There should be sound. Send to all. Okay, sorry about that, everyone else. So language detection can be advantageous to projects, and in some cases it's not. Everything is in Danish or everything is in Finnish, and we happily work with the document, and there's no reason to do anything about the language. Keyword extraction is relevant definitely for some people. If you have large texts in say in the engineering company I mentioned before, these prospects, they can really be wordy, and sometimes we want to just boil them down to something manageable, and actually even be able to retrieve documents from our archive system based on what keywords are mentioned. What are the essential points from each document? So we want all the documents that are about complaints or building prospects or are about a specific everything from Umelo municipality. Let us get all those documents, and that's very good for searching within a large body of documents to be able to retrieve the keywords of the document. And something similar is to extract a synopsis, which is a very clever technique actually. Taking a large document and boiling it down to 1-2 sentences. That's what you see down there in the bottom left corner. Is a large document from our own library of documents, boiled down to like 3 sentences. And it's not actually sentences that are inside the document. That's what's so clever. It's actually sentences that it synthetically builds based on the text. So it takes the whole long, imagine a medical journal or something like that, or a scientific paper, and boils it down to 3 sentences. This is the very most important part of the document. If you read these 3 sentences, you will know what the document is about. All right. So if everyone else has any questions, please do speak up. I'll try to answer them along the way. It's quite often better to it's quite often better to ask questions along the way rather than in the very end. Could someone maybe be so kind and confirm that they can actually hear something? Because one person is still complaining that there's no sound. That's me and my colleague in here can hear me very well. But if someone else could be kind and just confirm that they can hear me. I see a lot of people attending and only one person is in trouble, so sound is okay. Several people are writing. Sorry, I just have a long list here. I can hear you clear. I'm not going to touch this issue anymore. I think the sound is fine. Sorry about it. I think everything's good. All right. Please do ask up any do shout if you have any other questions. Any other questions? I'll just scroll through the questions here. I don't see anything about anything other than people who can hear me. So if anyone has any questions about what I'm talking about, please do shout as well. I'll try to read them as we go along. Excellent. And another feature that Document Intelligence is very happy to do is to recognize GDPR documents with personal identifiable information. Something that you probably shouldn't leak without your control. Document Intelligence cannot say whether you're allowed to leak this document or not, or whether you have a reason to hold this GDPR data, but at least we can say this data looks like something that holds personally identifiable information, PII. We can trawl through your whole document library and say, here are personal identification numbers, here are names, here are email addresses. We can trawl through your whole document archive, identify PII, and then you're going to have to evaluate whether you have a reason to hold that data. That's going to be another thing. But trawling through all the documents and finding all the mentions of names and personal numbers can be relevant to many people or many organizations. Document Intelligence works however you want it. One really cool feature about Document Intelligence is that it's the core of it, a lot of it is actually based on open source software. So we have made a lot of configuration and code around the open source software, but there's no licenses to third parties. And that's really essential. So Document Intelligence can run on virtually any computer in any environment, and there's no cloud requirement. We can every document that Document Intelligence touches can stay in your environment if you wish that. We can also work in the cloud if you want that, and if that's cheaper for you, for example, fine. Or if that's where your environment is, we can happily work in the cloud, but we can also happily work at what's called on-premise in your environment, and it's very secure, and all the documents stay within your bounds or in your organization, and you regain control of everything, or you keep control of everything. We can work as a one-time exercise. Maybe you want us to trawl through your documents and find a specific kind of documents, or you have a big archive that you need sorted. We'll be able to do that. In some cases, people want us to do something periodically, once a year, once every few years. We go through the and do whatever Document Intelligence does. And what's most often seen is that Document Intelligence works in real time. So whenever we talk about emails, whenever an email shows up in your inbox, Document Intelligence looks at it. Is it one of the emails I like to work with? No, that was a housing bill. I don't know. No. But customer complaint. I know about customer complaints, and it'll do whatever it has to do, recognize relevant fields, forward the email to the correct person, file it in the correct system. Whatever manual process used to be done for customer complaints is what now Document Intelligence will take the email, delete it from the inbox, put it in the relevant folder, do whatever has to be done, and go on to the next email and analyze if that is a parking fine. So I'll just give you 2 examples of how document intelligence has given great value to a few customers, to 2 customers, quite large organizations. And then I will show you a tiny demo, actually a demo. I hate making demos live to people, but we'll give it a shot. And then I'll maybe here if there should be any more questions, I'll be happy to answer any questions in the end as well. So if that's a plan, let's just start with 2 examples of how document intelligence has helped real world organizations. In a specific part of the Danish labor market, it is so that if you actually fire someone in within that part of the Danish labor market, you have to write an email to one of the labor unions, to a specific labor union. And not only do you have to write that email if you fire a person, you also have to write an email if you intend to fire someone. So I'm intending to, this person has been sick for 100 days, and yeah, it's not going to work out. We've done all the initiatives to find new work for them or to get them healthy and back on track, and nothing seems to work, so we're going to have to let them go. Dear labor union, now you know. Okay, 14-day passes, and the labor union will look at that email and say, that person is from this town. Okay, we forward the email to that town and to our local branch in that town, and they can look at it and potentially file a complaint with the employer, or say, well, nothing to do about it. It seems like that's the solution in this case, as it is. They handle it manually in the local labor union. 14 days pass, 2 weeks pass, and then a new email is sent to the labor union. Yeah, you had your 2 weeks to do something about it. The employee had 2 weeks to do something about it. There's really nothing anyone can do about it. This person will have to let him go. And the labor union looks in their inbox, gets this email. Oh, he's from this town. We forward it to that town and to that local office, and they actually do things. Just receiving the emails in the main office from the main box, looking at these people are going to be fired emails and forwarding them to local unions is a full-time job for one person. One person is sitting day in, day out, receiving emails and forwarding them to local unions. That's silly work. It's boring. It's error-prone. It takes time. It means also time passes from the email comes in until it's forwarded. Why would you spend your resources on something like this if you could say have a computer do it instead? So document intelligence goes through their email box, and as I mentioned a few times, recognize, oh, that's a parking fine. We don't know about parking fines. In this case, this is the invoice for a new printer. We don't know about those either. But here is an FYI, someone is going to be fired. Document intelligence first recognizes this is the kind of email it is. Second, it extracts from the email, which is very often an attachment, a PDF, written in prose. Dear labor union, for your information, we are going to let Susanna go after she's been ill for 100 days, and we intend to fire her at this date. That's all written. Document intelligence goes into that email, extracts who is being fired, what was their job role, who is the employer, what's the date they intend to be fired, if I didn't mention that already, and potentially also the reason, if it's written, the reason for the firing. And if their personal number is in Danish called CPR number, their personal number is mentioned in the email, we'll extract that from the email as well. With that information, we can go into the labor union's IT system, look up which local union does this person belong to, if they are a member, and if they're not a member, which local union should they belong to, or would they have belonged to if they were a member. And we automatically forward the email to that local union and we archive the email inside their Outlook Exchange server. Archive the email automatically. Isn't that clever? we are so enthusiastic about that. We can actually go through an email and do what a human would do automatically, and with at least a 90% correctness. In this case, it's well over 90%. We are correct, and what's even more cool, we know when we think we are not going to be correct. So that if there's a doubt in document intelligence whether is this the correct local union to forward it to or not, I'm not too sure. It'll not forward the email. It'll just leave it, and then the person can then spend their 10% of time forwarding emails, and instead of all the emails that are trivial. I mean, if someone is being fired from Randers municipality, it's probably going to be forwarded to the Randers local union, right? It's why have a person recognize this very trivial process work? It's so easy to have a computer do it. That's what document intelligence does, very efficiently and with a very low error rate, because if we're in doubt, we just leave the email. Another example that's similar to many of our cases, actually. I know there's a few from one of our Danish customers, a solar panel, people working with solar panels. I see them are participating, and this is a very similar to their cases, just from a Finnish housing company. In Finland, they have a system, much if any of the Danish participants know about andelsforeninger. It's very similar in Finland, where it's called a company. Is a few houses are set up as a company or a union, call it as well, and there's a lot of admin to be a housing company, to be 3 or 20 flats together. How do all this administration is handled typically by a housing administrator, as it is in this country, as it is in most countries, because it's too much work. And much of this housing administrator's work is handling documents for the housing companies, for the individual housing companies. They have general assemblies, they have budgets, they have annual reports, they have meeting notes from the general assemblies. Both have there's going to be a general assembly. This is the agenda, and then there are the minutes from the general assembly, the rules governing the individual housing companies. All these documents are, I know that because I'm in one myself, are quite voluminous. There's quite a few of these, and we help this housing company treat all these documents. The administrator. And I see a question. I'll get to that in just a little. Just to finish this example, and then I'll be happy to answer that question. Thank you very much for your question. So we go into the document archive, which is in this case a SharePoint archive, and recognize, first of all, is this one of the 10 document categories I just mentioned, minutes and agendas and notes and budgets and so forth? Is that one of those 10 categories? And if it is, let's extract what do you want to know about the agenda for General Assembly. You want to know which housing company is the agenda for, and what is the date, and what is the place for the General Assembly. Those three informations, a piece of information, we extract from the document and file the document in the correct place based on those pieces of information. If it's the rules governing an organization, it's first of all relevant to know which organization again are the rules about, but also there's actually several pieces of information. In one case, we went through and actually found who is allowed to pretend they are the organization, right? Who's allowed to go to the bank and say, I represent the organization. Usually it's the chairman and one other board member, or maybe it's the co-chair and 2 other board members. That little text snippet is actually written inside the rules, and we can extract that and dump it into or enter it into the SharePoint in this case, so we know who's allowed to pretend they are the organization, etc., etc. I think you get the point. We can recognize which type of document, and we can extract for each document type those pieces of information you want to know from that document. And it saves a lot of work, of course, for someone like a housing administrator, filing all the documents in the correct places. All right, let me just go through a couple of questions, see what we can find here. There's a lot of good questions. Do you need a large body of not forwarded emails? That's a really good question. Do you need a large body of not forwarded email to set up the system for that specific use case? And then a second similar question: how long time do you need to set up the system? Jakob, I don't know if it sounds like I almost paid you to ask this question. It's a really good question. Thank you very much, Jakob. Because the first partial question there, yes, you need quite a big body of documents to have the computer recognize this what constitutes, for example, a parking fine. I would say 100. In some cases, we've been down to 10. We only needed 10 parking fines and maybe 10 other documents to be able to recognize what is a parking fine, what is not a parking fine. But that will usually be not enough. 100 would be probably the very minimum. But in many cases, finding 100 of each type is trivial for the organization. That's what we found. It's very rarely been an issue to find 100 of each type of document, or find 100 driver's licenses and letting us train the computer to recognize the categories of what type of vehicle you're allowed. We need maybe 100 driver's licenses to tell the computer what we mean when we say vehicle category. 100 is usually some kind of number. Jakob, please expand if that didn't answer your question, or if you meant something different. And then what's a really good question, Jakob, and that I'm very happy you asked: how long do you need to set up this system? Actually, many projects we made have been within a few weeks. From we start with the customer till we have at least proved that document intelligence works and that we're able to categorize documents and extract the piece of information they need. We're talking weeks and maybe even 2 weeks. As little as that, it could be more as well. But it's a very short time, and actually not very many hours. It's not very expensive. I'm not gonna quote prices here, but it'll surprise you how few hours how cheap it actually is going to be for you to set up document intelligence and at least to prove that document intelligence works on your documents is done within typically just very few months, very few weeks again. Jakob, I hope it answers your question. Otherwise, please do come back, and I'll be happy to expand on my answer. Jakob says good answers, thanks. So either Jakob is a colleague of mine or Jakob is had his answer, his question answered very well. Excellent. All right. So it's actually Jakob kind of answers your also goes into the same. We suggest that if we work with document intelligence in your environment, that we prove, instead of making a huge big project with integration to all kinds of systems and getting everything to work to begin with, we suggest that we work with document intelligence in your organization by proving that document intelligence works. Document intelligence is going to be the new thing to you, so that's what we want to prove working, and that takes typically a few weeks, as I mentioned. So let's set up maybe we call it a proof of concept, or sometimes we also call it pilot project, because what we do in this proof will be working code and will be something we can reuse when we make the actual project later on. So set up a proof of concept or a little demo or phase 1, you could call it even, where we prove that document intelligence works. We train it on your documents in a few weeks, and with that code, with that model, then comes a later project of similar size typically, where we integrate it into your system. So we integrate it into your email folder, we integrate it into your archiving system, to your SharePoint system if you use WordPoint. However you operate with your documents, if they are in a OneDrive or data lake, if you have some CRM system that expose maybe some APIs we can work with. If your customer, like in the labor union I mentioned, we go into the customer system or the member system and look up who the local union, given a member or given a job position, given an employer, where does this member belong? This is looked up in the member system, and all those integrations are known technology. We know we can do that. You know we can do it. There's no reason doing this in a pilot project, but of course, at some point we're going to do it, and so we leave that as a phase 2. This is our suggested project, and that has worked really well with many customers. And but of course, why not start with the most critical thing and get everything set up afterwards? Just take the time. We're doing very well for time. Alrighty. So now I'm going to show you code. I did this demo is going to be a little bit boring for those who are not very technical, and if anyone wants to ask questions now, if anyone wants to leave, I'm not going to be offended. This is the demo, and if you want to see how we work with document intelligence, you're very welcome to stick around, and I'll just show that. If someone thinks, okay, my God, he talked for 40 minutes, is the demo going to stop? It is going to stop, but if you want to stop now, you're perfectly welcome as well. So, demo. Let me just show how we actually work with document intelligence. Document intelligence is really, this is a very minimal setup of document intelligence, of how we work with it. It's a bit more expensive if in the real document intelligence, but let me just show how we actually work with this. And what I want to show you is I can't really go out and show real world example. I'm sorry. I think if you were my client, you would probably be a bit annoyed if I used your data in a demo. So what do we do? Cooking recipes. Let's do cooking recipes. Okay. So you're gonna have to imagine the use case. I'm sorry. I don't know if there's a use case for this, but let's imagine that you want to extract all the ingredients from a big volume of recipes, and maybe you even want to know which recipes contain which ingredients, right? So for a given recipe, what are the ingredients in that recipe? All right. We have gone through a lot of recipes, looking at what are and telling the computer these are the ingredients inside each recipe, and then we train the computer to recognize these entities. We call them these ingredients, and then I can throw any recipe at the computer, at document intelligence, and have it tell me what are the ingredients in this particular recipe, right? I hope you can see the link to what we've been talking about so far, how that would be similar to the email setup I mentioned. So let's go ahead and first of all, let me just show you how we actually tell the computer what the ingredients in a given recipe are. And it's actually done in this little browser interface here. Tick tock, tick tock, tick. Oh, here we go. I'll stop for a minute. So I have given it a volume of a few recipes, and you see here all the ingredients. Some of them it already knows. Some of the ingredients I've already told it. If you see salt, it's an ingredient. I'm not going to tell you that. But some of it I haven't told it already, so I'll go through and do that. Yeast is an ingredient. Flour. It's a little bit slow here. Flour. Yeast. This takes time for salt as an ingredient. You get the point. I'm not gonna go through every the whole recipe. Let's see if we can find. Let's start dough an ingredient. No, you can call dough an ingredient. Do we have more? Just scanning through. That seems like I got many of them. This is how we go through. Like I mentioned, maybe 100 dry yeast. You could call dry yeast also an ingredient. So I marked 2 words there. And this is how we would go through, say, 100 documents and annotate them. We call it. We go through and mark what are the relevant words, the word we are interested in inside each document. When we've done that, we train the model. We tell the computer, okay, now I've told you what an ingredient is. Now you have to figure out inside a text what is an ingredient and what is not. What is the system that constitutes an ingredient and a non-ingredient? That's quite complicated to tell the computer how to do that. I'm going to skip that. And then instead, let me just make sure I run the correct this thing, and I run in a second this thing, and then I can actually now find a recipe and have the machine return what are the ingredients inside this recipe. All right, someone in the chat, does someone want to give me either a dish, the name of a dish, or does someone want to give me a country and I will find a recipe from that country? Who dares give me either an ingredient or a country? Is someone brave enough to do that? I'll not make fun of you, I promise. Anyone here, just to pretend this is semi-random? Anyone wants to give me there's quite a few people in here. Anyone brave enough? I've done this demo a few times online in some webinars and no one is ever brave enough. Did someone show up here? No one wants to give me either a country or a dish. Pizza. Okay. Thank you. Someone said pizza. Let's just Google here. Where's my? There we go. A lot of windows here. Let's just do that, and then we say eat recipe Italian. She already had the meatballs, but never had pizza before. So let's do that. Italian pizza. Let's go to there and see, is this a good recipe? This is a good recipe. Blah, 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 blah. Alrighty, we take all the text here. It will get the images as well. That's perfectly fine. Not the comments. So there we go. Copy, paste it into here, right? And it tells me the ingredients in this pizza recipe are flour, sugar, salt, yeast, flour again, olive oil, garlic, onion, vegetable oil even. It actually recognizes as both oil mentioned, olive oil and vegetable oil recognizes. Tomatoes, sugar, salt and pepper again. Do you have more we didn't see? Pepper, mozzarella, and some leaves of some kind. It probably says a word in front of the leaves. I didn't recognize that, but it's been very efficient in extracting all the ingredients from the documents. Of course, I should point out, this is not the way you're going to be working with document intelligence. You're going to have it integrated into your mail system or your SharePoint or your customer relations management system or whatever IT systems you're using already. We need to integrate document intelligence into that. But I hope it demonstrates that document intelligence is very efficient in recognizes little text snippets inside a document and saying, these are the text snippets you are interested in. In this case, ingredients from a recipe, but it could also be number plates from parking fines, right? It's really, really good at that. I hope it gives you a little taste of how document intelligence works and how happy we are working with it, and that it is really efficient and it's very good at what it does. And also with a few examples, I hope you could extrapolate from the cooking ingredients to how it could work in your environment. If there are no more questions, I just skip through it again. I don't think there are any more questions. I will say so much thank you for your attention. I hope you'll grab a hold of me or one of my colleagues, one of the sales representatives from Konica Minolta, if you want to hear more about document intelligence, or if you have more questions, maybe questions pop up later, maybe you are not comfortable asking questions in a webinar here, perfectly fine. Grab a hold of me, Christian Winter, or grab hold of one of my colleagues. Other than that, I will say thank you so much for your attention, and hope to speak to you about this or any other subject later. Bye.